welcome to the Mixing Glass, brought to you by Bardtenders. Right now, this episode is going to be coming out while Mike and I are in Louisville, Kentucky. Mike, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm excited. I mean, just talking about Louisville being there is it's getting me excited.
I know, it's so crazy. You know, we're recording on October 3rd. We're going to be there basically the 18th through the 24th at the Elevate conference put on by Chill, doing some live podcast episodes. It's going to be a lot of fun. But we also have a surprise for our listeners. Mike, you want to kind of give them a little hint, a little taste of what's going to happen?
The surprise is the pop-up. Is that what I'm supposed to be talking about?
I think it's a bar pop-up.
You did not coach me for that. I was like, I don't want to give it away now.
I thought that was a bit. I thought you were doing so good.
Wasn't a bit. Oh, yeah, we're doing a bar pop-up, and I guess I don't even have to bartend at this point in time, which is probably good for everyone involved.
Yeah, right. You get to wear a shirt that says "I'm just the bar back." It'll be great. But no, if you're listening to this episode when it comes out on Monday, the 21st of October, the pop-up is tomorrow night, October 22nd, with Fernet Branca. I think that there's a couple bartenders out there who might have heard of that brand in the past.
Is it actually official now?
It is actually official as of this morning. Awesome. So I thought we could tease it today, and
I feel so validated.
We're
gonna have some swag too, right?
We are going to have some swag. There's going to be at least one coin there. I don't know if there's going to be more, but there's definitely going to be a bunch of Fernet stuff. So something for everybody out there. But the reason we're here tonight, Mike, is because we have an amazing guest on the show. Now, I'm going to read most of this bio. This bio is absolutely incredible because our guest has done some incredible things over his 25 years in the hospitality industry. But we're going to let him tell a little bit about his own story along the way. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Chris Cardone. Chris Cardone is the principal owner of Continuous Beverage Solutions, and he brings 24 years of bartending, hospitality, and nightlife experience. He has trained staff, designed, opened, and provided beverage consultant services for a wide range of establishments across New York, including neighborhood pubs, New York City cocktail bars, high-end restaurants, sports bars, catering services, seasonal hotspots, and high-end nightclubs. His expertise also includes consulting on the openings of several restaurants and bars in New York City and Long Island, as well as serving as the Chief Mixologist for Via Carota Craft Cocktails. Chris was named Bartender of the Year in 2017 after winning the Diageo World Class Bartending US competition, the world's largest global mixology competition. He placed 5th overall in the Diageo World Class Global Finals that same year and was a 2-time top 5 national finalist in 2014 and 2016. Since 2018, Chris has served as a judge for the Diageo World Class competitions, further solidifying his influence in the industry. He is also an active member of the World Class Collective, acting as a Diageo Reserve Portfolio Brand Educator and as an educator for the Diageo Bar Academy. Chris has just launched his own business, Continuous Beverage Solutions. Continuous Beverage Solutions is dedicated to educating, inspiring, and empowering individuals to thrive and live healthier lives through memorable and inspiring engagements. Chris, I'm going to let you talk about yourself now for the rest of the episode. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. That bio is sponsored by ChatGPT.
I love ChatGPT. People give it a hard time, but like this is what it's for, right? To help us with those like tasks. They're a little bit harder to do and take a little bit of time. So I love it.
For sure.
You know, it left out one of the important details that I was interested in talking about.
I know. We're going to save it for the episode.
Okay, fine.
We're going to get there. It's going to come up.
No spoilers. All right.
It's going to come up.
What's that?
Yeah, exactly. That's what
bartending.
Yeah, you might have interacted with a few celebrities along the way, too. Yeah, that's a thing we want to hear about.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into the meat of this episode, we like to do a little thing called Roll for Initiative. Now, I know you have a 20-sided die on your phone ready to rock and roll.
I do.
But, what number do you think you have over there?
All right, let's see. 20.
Oh, wow, my God. Our
critical roll.
20.
Is it really the first?
This is the first ever Nat 20. So
look at that.
Those of you who play Dungeons and Dragons, cool things happen whenever you roll a Nat 20. And this is the first time, so this is great. You actually get to turn the icebreaker question around on us. I was so excited for a hot seat, and you took it away from me. On a nat 20, you get to ask either of us to make an animal noise of your choice.
Oh my God! Come on, dude.
Oh my God!
You gotta put the power out there.
I wouldn't say either of us. I would say both of us, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm here for it.
My inner Coming to America. Bark like a dog.
Wait, both of us?
A big dog.
A big dog, both of us? Or is it
I did not sign up for this.
Well, you didn't expect a nat 20. No one ever does.
All right, ready? Roo, 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 roo. I'm sorry. I got a little death metal at the end there. I'm sorry.
All right. Am I doing the same thing, or do I have a different animal?
No, you do a little dog.
Oh, for God's sake. Ridiculous.
Oh my goodness.
Anyone who has never seen Coming to America needs to see that movie for that scene. Google Bark Like a Dog and you'll understand where I was going.
Oh no. That's so great. We've been doing this for almost 3 years now, and no one has rolled a 20. I was waiting for this. So
look at me, blazing trails, whatever that expression is.
Oh man, that was good.
You know what you got to do now, John, is you got to do a wild magic chart for that. To where if they roll a nat 20, they got to roll like a D10, and then there's like 10 options off of that.
We'll make it so from here.
Because I don't want to make more noises on the internet like that. Okay.
Well, you can.
I will do that, but you have to pay me. It's like $5. You know what I mean? $5 a month for that privilege.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you. I really enjoyed having that permanently on the internet. That was great.
On that note, I'm out of here. Have a great night, guys.
Best content ever. All right. Now I actually really do want to talk about you. Let's get into our origin story. We talk to every guest about this. We've all had our first shift. We've all had our first job working in the hospitality industry. What was your first job? How did you get into food and beverage, and especially the cocktail scene too?
Yeah. Okay, so it's kind of a cliche, silly story, but I was in college, and I was one night watching a movie, and it happened to be a movie called Cocktail, and I was 20, and I put it on, and I'd never seen the movie before. I didn't really kind of know what I was getting into, and I had never bartended or anything like that before, and I remember watching it and being like, oh my God, like I want to be that guy, and I'm not talking about Tom Cruise. I'm talking about Brian Brown. Like
absolutely.
I was like, he's so cool. Like he's so cool. Right. And so I literally, as soon as I was done with that semester of college, I looked up as soon as I got home, it was, I was done in May like everybody else. And I looked up the closest bartending school to where I was living, and I drove over the next Monday. I signed up in person. And I started that day. It was a 5-day, 40-hour class. And, you didn't really, in all fairness, and I actually ended up managing the same school and then partnering up and opening another location with the owner of that school. But at the end of the day, like bartending school is a nonsense. It really is. Sure. You can nowadays, I mean, it just doesn't even make sense. But I will say you did learn how to use two hands. And like, if there's one skill in bartending that still to me has value is understanding how to use both hands, because you become ambidextrous, and there are so many people who can't do it. And I think again that was the one skill out of all of that nonsense that I took that really did, kind of stay with me all these years. Having said that, as soon as we were done with the class, we went across the street to a bar to celebrate our graduation, right? So,
TGI Fridays.
No. It was an absolute dump. It was called the Roadhouse. And if you've ever seen the movie, not the new one, I don't even want to talk about the new one, the OG with Patrick Swayze. If you've ever seen that movie, like this place rivaled that. Like there were fights every night. It was super rowdy. It was like a true dive bar. And I went, and we were all kind of hanging out. And the bartender was actually a girl I knew from high school. So we started talking, and I told her I wanted to bartend, and she was like, "Oh, we're looking for a bartender on Monday nights." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And so the owner was there, and he came over and started talking to me. And he's like, "Yeah, if you want Monday nights, you can have them, like, whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so that was how I got into this business. I started working for a guy named Mike at the Roadhouse Pub in Central Long Island. And
you didn't even have to show him your certification or anything, your diploma?
No, nothing. He was like, He's like, yeah, like it was such a like a, you want to work here? Sure, you can have Mondays. Like it was such a like a kind of tossed it to me, and I was like, at the end of the day, who wants to hire a 20-year-old guy at a dive bar, right? So if he's willing to give it to me, I took it and ran with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Take every opportunity that's given to you at that point.
For sure, at that point, yeah, to get your foot in the door anywhere, 100%.
Yeah, I kind of love that too, because like we talk about all these first jobs that everybody has, and like some people have the story where like you lie, absolutely, you've never bartended at all once in your life. But sometimes the way it worked for you is how it happens for most people. You walk in, I'll take whatever you can get me. It's a friend of a friend at a bar, and you get your foot in the door, and you kind of get to actually make drinks for the first time.
Yeah, and I will say that job, although it was absolutely ridiculous in every aspect of the industry, that job taught me invaluable lessons that I don't think a lot of bartenders have ever learned nowadays. The cocktail culture has driven our industry into amazing growth ways. But at the end of the day, the art of bartending, actually bartending, is something that I don't think a lot of people have learned how to do anymore. How to deal with difficult people, how to cut people off, how to break up fights, how to stop fights before they happen, how to like, I'm just trying to think of other things. Like back when I started, like you had to clean ashtrays. As the shit was going on, you're dumping out ashtrays. Like the old ways of, and I still think about it like to this day, where you would take your beer and when you were done with it, you would like put it on the rail. And if it went in the rail, that was kind of like a nonverbal way of saying, I'll take another one. And so all those nonverbal cues, like, how to deal with how to like drop the, I guess, defensiveness of people like construction workers who are getting off at 4:00 and just want to come in and have a couple beers, not being served by a 20-year-old, guy. Yeah. So like to learn how to like almost like navigate that relationship into they actually enjoying talking to you versus, like the pretty girl kind of stereotype of like, the 1999, 2000 bar scene. And so it taught me invaluable lessons that I still like to this day. Like, I think that job probably was the best hands-on training I could have ever gotten.
No, you said something important too. Like, I think that there's something about the industry now. Like, we have made all these leaps and bounds, and like you're kind of in like that golden age kind of era of like, bars. But we've also gotten away from, like you said, there aren't just bars really anymore, and like restaurants. You have these very like specialized things. You have your craft cocktail bar, you have your dive bar, you have your tropical bar, you have your family bar. You have your restaurant. It's so different. There's not just like, this is the neighborhood bar. We do a little bit of everything, and like we have conversations with people, we actually get to know their lives. Like it doesn't happen that much anymore. It's wild.
No, 100%. We had a toaster oven behind the bar, and we had Elio's pizza. That was the food. That and bags of small bags of potato chips. That was our food. We had a jukebox. We had a pool table, a dartboard. And that was it. And it smelled like skunk to beer and a bathroom that you really didn't want to use. Like it was incredible. It was
more of that.
It was what all the dive bars now want to be. Like everyone wants to have like a clean dive bar. This was the model. This was the model.
See, to me, it sounds like you've got a golden like opportunity for a new academy,
Right.
Roadhouse Academy, fuck the cocktailing stuff. I'll teach you how to be a real bartender,
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So we started there. How did you, kind of move into like the next step? Because you're learning more as you go.
Yeah, I went back to college. And when I went back to my senior year, I was messing around, no joke, on it was either Hotmail or Ask Jeeves. I still don't remember. But one of them, I was messing around and I found this site called the FBA, which is the Flair Bartenders Association. And I ended up ordering, you ready for this, a VHS tape. For those of you listening who don't know what a VHS tape is, you can Google it or ask your grandfather. And I watched all these rock star bartenders who were like flipping bottles around to like the most ridiculous music. It was like AC/DC was like dubbed over it. Like it was crazy. It was awesome. It was like rock star bartenders being like,
you still have the VHS?
I still have it somewhere. For sure.
Bonus content. That's great.
In fact, when I'm done, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna take a picture of it. I'm gonna tag you on Instagram and show you this. I have it somewhere. I have no idea where it is, but I will find it. And so I was like, oh my God, like this is cocktail. This is what I saw on tape. And so I would no joke, I would just sit there and copycat these routines, these moves, practicing with glass bottles that I would wrap up in duct tape. And so they didn't break. So if they shattered, it didn't cut me.
Yeah, because they didn't have flare training bottles back then, right?
Not then yet. So it was all duct taped glass bottles. And I would just practice and copycat these routines and these moves. And I loved it. And one day I was on the site and it popped up that there was a flare bartending competition taking place in the Cayman Islands. And I had never left the country. And I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it. I'm going. I called up mom and dad and I was like, so I'm going to go to the Caymans. I got to get a passport. And they're like, what? And I told them, like, yeah, I'm going to get a flare bartend in this competition. And I got down there and it was like 24 besides me, other flare bartenders. And some of them were kind of green like I was, but there were some like monsters there. And I was just like, oh shit, like what did I just get myself into? And instead of them being like, you know, fuck off, new guy, it was like a fraternity. Immediately, they were like, you know, where are you from? What are you doing? You want me to help you? Like, I saw you do this. This is how you'll do it, and this is how you'll hit it. And it was like, oh my god, like these guys are so approachable and super down to earth and like nice people. And I got sucked in, and I was all in. And so then I used that as a way to kind of travel, and I was going all around the country from till about 2005 or 6. And in 2005 and 6, I got to a point where I was kind of like getting burnt out on the amount of I was putting like 50-hour-a-week practices in of doing this, and I got just burnt out. And I started judging, and I was like, oh, like I could still go to the same comps, see the same people, you know, connect and have fun, and I don't have to practice for 50 hours a week. Sold. And so I kind of went into judging, and that was a whole nother adventure and really fun. And it shows you, and we'll talk about this more with World Class, but it shows you how to compete in a very different way. You know, you compete and you compete and you compete, but when you judge, you go, oh, and it just it gives you a completely 180 look on competing.
Yeah, it's like teaching, right? Like as soon as you have to teach a subject versus, you know, having to sit in the class and like watch a PowerPoint or, you know, anything like that, you learn so much more as a teacher.
Right.
Like,
so then I was into the flare thing, and it was hot, and it was everywhere. And then I'll never forget, I want to say it was like 06 or maybe 05. And a guy named Mike McLean, who was still in the industry, he was a big flare. He was the part of the company that had the flare bottles. And Mike was in town. We were doing a competition that I was organizing with him called the Big Apple Showdown. It was at the Javits Center in New York. And he was like, hey, I made a reservation at this bar called Milk and Honey. We should go check it out. And it was like, I was like, oh, okay, I'd never heard of it, whatever. And it's so clear for me still. We walked up to some random door, no sign, no nothing. Knock on the door, they come and open it. Or no, I think we had to call, and we said we were outside. And they open up the door, and all you see is black cloth. We, you know, part the black cloth, and all of a sudden I'm in 1920. And there's candle-lit bar, and there's jazz music, very soft, and there's like maybe, you know, 6 seats at the bar, I think. I don't remember. And there's a couple tables, and there's this guy behind the bar just by himself. And we sat down, and, you know, he was like, hey, it's nice to meet you guys. Have you ever been here before? No, I'm Sasha Petrosky. And he's like, you know, we don't do menus here. I don't know if you've ever been here before, but like, what do you like to drink? I'll make you something. And I remember being like, what the fuck is going on? Because everything I had known was like, you know, and I was like, this is crazy. And it was all cash, and we left. I remember being like, holy shit, like that was cool. Like cool. And not maybe 6 months later, the Flatiron Lounge opened up with Julie Reiner and Audrey Saunders. And then Pegu was right behind that. And then EO opened up not too long after that. And it was just this like, boom. And I remember I wasn't working in Manhattan yet. I was working in Long Island at a steakhouse. But I remember thinking, like, I read the writing on the wall. I said, holy shit, like, this is going to be the next thing. And so I remember going and buying like Dale DeGroff's book and Gary Reagan's book. Because at that time, that was it. That was your choice.
That was it.
And I remember like holding on to them like at work and being like, what am I going to work? What am I going to make today for everybody? You know, and like trying to find like, oh, like Sidecar. Okay, let's try that one. And, you know, and being all the regulars being like, I don't want to try your stupid drink. I'm like, no, it's good. Try it. And it just sucked me in. And Flair kind of, you know, slowly did this, and mixology kind of went like that. And that was the end of that. And then World Class happened in 14, 15, 16, 17. Sobriety happened in 15, and here we are.
and now here we are. No, that's incredible. I mean, like you really got to, live through that experience with like a first eye glance. I mean, I know like little difference in age, but it's the same for me. Like the Death and Co book came out for me like my first year of actually bartending. It was the same thing, right? Like pull the book out, make the drinks, go through the reps, try and convince all of my regulars to do something other than beer, like please help me out.
Yeah.
And you had the same journey like the whole way through. But I do want to unpack a little bit, and I think it's important too, talking about like this change. You had done all these flair bartending, you had done competitions, you worked in bars and restaurants, and you said you made that change to be sober. And I think that this is an important like topic. So how did that come about, and how did you transition into that journey? Because in 2015, there weren't a lot of people that were being vocal about, sobriety at that point. It was
nor was I at that point. So, all right. So the backstory is over, I want to say maybe like 10 years. I had a couple different episodes of weird hallucinogenic blackouts. And what I'm talking like hallucinating, like gone, like delirium gone. And so the first time I remember happening, I was out for the day on a river, like paddling, and the sun, was out, and it was like the summer, and wasn't really eating or drinking the whole day. And then we went to a bar afterwards. We had a couple drinks, and the next day I was told that I was like telling everybody how aliens were going to come and kill us all. And we all kind of laughed it off, and we were like, what the hell, like no big deal, whatever. You must have been dehydrated. That was the sure. The next time it happened, I was at a bar/restaurant, like a nicer place. And I left, and I was found kind of like hiding in a bush, talking about colors that I was seeing, and like things that like not being really like people weren't understanding. Again, like delirium, where people were like, what the fuck are you even talking about? And I'm completely giving you secondhand information because I don't remember any of these things.
Yeah, sure.
I woke up in a hospital that time, and a friend brought me there and was like, listen, like we didn't know what to do with you. Like you were just like gone. And so we didn't know if you were like drugged up or whatever. And the doctor said, he's like, we tested you. We didn't find any traces of any like drugs or anything like that in your system. We don't really know what happened. And I was like, oh, I don't know what happened either. But of course, when you drink, and I was really drinking at that point. And I, of course, what do? You say, oh, well, maybe the test was wrong. It was somebody put something in my drink. You make any excuse you can to justify it. And then in 2015, I was working out in the East End of Long Island at a restaurant, and the person who had hired me, she had a 2-floor house, and so she was subletting her basement to staff. And so after I'd gotten hired, she told me, she's like, listen, like you're an hour and a half away. If you want, you can use my basement. You can pay me rent, and you can stay Friday, Saturday, Sunday while you work those shifts. And so I was like, yeah, great, let's do it. So it was like the second or third week I was working there, and we went out after the shift. And I worked like a middle turn thing, so we were done by like 10 o'clock, and we went out to a bar in the area. It's a place called Greenport, so it's like a really like 1 block little area, and we went to a bar, and I had a beer and a shot. Now some people, a beer and a shot that's a lot. For me at that time, that was like an hors d'oeuvre. That was nothing. And I'm only bringing that up because there was never like a central theme to this blackout thing where I was like, oh, I had 45 drinks and that's why this happened. Like there was never a number associated with this. It was just, or
you were only drinking one type of thing, or
right. There was no consistency to this. So I woke up the next day. I was home, like home, and I had no idea what happened. So I texted her and I said, hey, why am I home? And what's going on? And so she said, you really have no idea what happened? And I was like, no, I have no idea what happened. So this is, again, all second nature. But apparently what happened was we got back after those 2 drinks, and she said, have a good night. And I said, have a good night. And I went down, and then I came up to her front door knocking. And she answered the door, probably thinking like maybe I forgot something or whatever. And she said I was white as a ghost. And I told her that we had to leave the house because zombies were coming to kill us. And she kind of laughed and was like, go to bed. And I was like, no, I'm serious. And she realized that I was like dead serious. So after talking to me for like, I guess 15, 20 minutes, she realized I wasn't going anywhere. So she called the cops, and she said, listen, like this guy's not violent. He's not threatening me. I'm not worried, but I have no idea what to do with him. Mm-hmm. And so they came, and apparently I told them that zombies were coming to kill them too, and they needed to get out of there. And so what do you do when you're a cop and you need to get rid of somebody? They put me on a train and sent me back home. And so
that's usually how that works.
So I got to my stop, I guess, and I got a cab, and I took the cab back to my house. And so she told me all this, and she was like, what drugs were you on? And I was like, no, I don't do drugs. Like I've always been a drinker, but I've never ever done drugs. And I said, I don't know what's going on. Like I don't have an explanation for this. And so it freaked me out a little bit. And I said, all right, third time's a charm. Let me take a year off. And I called up a buddy of mine and I said, hey, like I had a really fucked up night. It really freaked me out. I'm going to take a year off from drinking. And his response was, yeah, okay. And I said, no, I'm serious. And he said, dude, I don't think you could take a year off from drinking. And it bothered me that he said that, because what bothered me was I kind of agreed with him. And so I said, no, fuck it. Now I'm really doing it. And that little bit of sort of anger and like kind of defensiveness actually was the fuel that probably helped me do it. And so the first month was the first month, and the second month was the second month, and the third month was the third month. And I got to about 7, 8 months, maybe 9 months. And I was working a shift, and a server who was also at the time, I don't know, I haven't talked to him in years. He was sober, and he came over and he said, hey man, can I ask you a personal question? And I said, yeah, what's up? And he said, what happens when you get back to a year? Like, are you just going to go back to being like you were when you were drinking all the time? And I looked at him and I said, honestly, Sean, I said, I don't think I'm ever going to drink again. And I think it just came out, and I didn't really put any thought behind it. And then when I got to about 9 months, like I know that time where I was mentally, I remember thinking, no, I'm done. And I'm almost 10 years, and I've just never picked it back up. And what turned it for me, and again, this is where and we can get to this because it's Sober October, but it's not an argument with the month off from drinking, but I think that and I did it a lot where, for me, I would take December off every year, and I would lie to myself, and I would say December is the hardest month to be sober because you have all the house, the house parties,
family, etc.
Work is busy. Like that's the hardest month. And so I would lie to myself, and I would say, if I can go 31 days in December and not drink, I don't have a drinking problem. I like to drink, but I don't have a problem. That's what I would lie to myself every year. And so there's a danger in white knuckle sobriety where you hold on those 31 days, and then the next day you're like, boom, 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 to catch up almost. Like that's like your mentality, right? Like I did it. And then you go fucking nuts the next day. And that's what I would always do. So I got to the 9-month period, and I was like, holy shit. Like I had a moment of clarity where I said, every single part of my life is better. Every part. And I was like, I don't fucking miss this. I don't miss being hungover, and I don't miss being like, you ever wake up and you dread what's on your phone because you don't remember what you did or said, and you're like, oh shit, like I hope I didn't piss anybody off last night. Like I don't miss that. I went to the doctor for a physical when I was drinking, and he's like, dude, you're pre-diabetic. And he's looking at me, he's like, you're not overweight. Like, how much do you drink? And I said to him, honestly, I drink a lot. And he's like, well, we're gonna have to consider insulin. Like it was getting to that point. Yeah. A year later, I take my physical, being fully sober. And he's like, you're not drinking anymore. And I was like, no. And I was like, how did you know that? And he's like, because you're down like 20 pounds and all of your levels are back to where they should be in a year.
Science doesn't lie.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I just, and I guess we'll talk more about this, but I've never tried to preach like, hey, you should be sober too. But for me, it's a no fucking brainer. Like every part of my life is better now. And I don't see the value of what I got out of drinking versus the value of what I don't get out of drinking is like so far skewed that it's not even a thought for me.
Yeah, of course. So we're in an industry where people drink. I mean, that's just our industry doesn't exist if people don't drink. Mm-hmm. What is a piece of advice you would give somebody then that might be on like that path for you, other than like just go do it? Like what is like your words of encouragement for them?
So I get this question actually a lot. And so just to give you a small bit of background about my sort of sober helping people journey, when you get sober, it's very similar to veganism, where you feel like you've figured out the key to life and you want to shout it from the fucking rooftops. You want to tell everybody else, oh my God, I figured it out. And I want to help you figure it out too. And so following that path in 2016, 17, when I won World Class, I had a big platform and I said, let me use this for good, right? Let me tell the world that you can be a sober bartender and you can win the biggest competition in the country and you can have a thriving job without drinking. Because that was my big insecurity. When I decided to quit drinking, my big insecurity was that I would either be a lesser bartender or viewed like really shittily by my peers and kind of ultimately be forced to leave this industry. That was what I was really afraid of. And so, I was like, let me tell everybody. And I can't even explain to you guys the amount of emails and texts that I got where it was like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, we don't want to hear it. Get off your soapbox, get off your high horse, fuck off, and I was like so hurt by it because I thought I was doing it right. And I realized that I was pissing everyone off. And I said, all right. And I zipped it up for a long time. And so for about 6 years, I've been privately helping people. And people have reached out to me on email or text. And they're like, listen, like, I don't know if you're okay with this, but I'd love your advice. I know you're sober. I know you're a bartender. I'm really struggling with this. I work around people that are drinking while I'm working and I don't know what to do, or, I keep blacking out. I don't know what to do, or I'm thinking about just cutting back and how do you do it? And I get a lot of this stuff. So my first piece of advice to tell every single person, I'll say the same thing to you right now, is that every single person's relationship with alcohol is different. Everyone. And so there is no one size fits all with this. It's just not. And what works for me does not work for Joe or Sally. It just doesn't. And you have to, I'm going to steal a quote from one of my people that I use inspiration from, which is a guy named Simon Sinek, who wrote Start With Why. Yeah. And the whole concept of that book is ingenious. And so just like with anything else, you start with why. So if you're considering cutting back or quitting drinking, or you want to be sober curious and you want to find a healthier relationship, start with why. Why do you feel that way? What is it about your relationship with alcohol that's bothering you? Because there are plenty of people out there that go out and they have a healthy relationship with alcohol. They have a drink, they have 2 drinks, they have 3 drinks, whatever the case may be. And they go home and they live normal lives and they don't have blackouts and they don't have hangovers like that. And they just have a couple drinks or maybe a bottle of wine with their partner or whatever at dinner or their friends at dinner. And that's it. And it doesn't hold them like it had a hold on me. I always say it's like a tornado for me or like a whirlwind and you get caught in it. You can't get out. So for me, I was drink a lot. Next morning, wake up, feel like shit, get to work, drink a lot, wake up next morning, feel like shit, wake up next morning, feel like shit. And you just wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again. You can't get out of the world.
Prophecy. You can't stop.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of people out there who don't have that relationship with alcohol and they're doing just great. But again, if you are feeling like, oh shit, like this isn't aligning with where I want to be in my life, then start with why and figure out what it is. Then I'll use another person where it's thinking about envisioning, or it's kind of Simon talking about this too, but don't think of yourself as, oh, I got to quit drinking. It's label yourself to what you want to be. So for me, I work out every morning. Now, granted, I'm not going to a gym. I'm using dumbbells in my living room, but I do it every single day. And the reason I do it every single day, which is sometimes I wake up and I don't fucking want to do it, but every day I wake up, I say to myself, I got to do this because I view me as a healthy person. So I want to be healthy. And how do I do that? I work out with dumbbells in the morning so I can be healthy. And then I take a walk and I make sure I get to 8,000 to 10,000 steps every day because I want to be healthy. So I don't drink because I want to be healthy. So imagine where you want to be and then decide how to make your relationship with alcohol fit that role. And that is how you handle what your situation is. So some people are like, I want to be a sober person. And then it's, why do you want to be sober? As soon as you have that sort of motivation of why you want to be sober, it's way easier to be sober. And if your motivation is, I want to have a healthier lifestyle with alcohol so that I have more energy with my kids in the morning, or I want to be a better partner, or I don't want to feel like shit when I wake up the next day, and I just want to have a healthier relationship, that's your motivation. And that's how you find it. It's not, I'm going to quit drinking, because that doesn't work for most people. You can quit for a little while and then you have a slip up and then you feel like shit and you're like, fuck, like I screwed up and I drank and now I suck and I might as well just give up on my whole plan. But if you say, I view myself as someone who has a healthy relationship with alcohol, and then you have a night where you go out, it doesn't blow up your whole thing. You say, all right, I went overboard this one night, but I'm still a person who has a healthy relationship with alcohol. I just went a little crazy tonight. Let's get back on that horse and try again. And it takes the pressure off.
Yeah. I mean, routines are one of the hardest things to build. You talked about your routine, what you do every day. Routines are also the easiest thing to break. Okay, all it takes, a lot of people talk about this when they work out. I was a college athlete, the same thing. I used to work out every single morning. Guess what I did when I graduated college? I didn't work out every single morning, and it is so hard to get back into those routines. I mean, everybody experiences these things differently, but whenever you have that why question and why you're doing it, I think that that's the exact context that, for anything you do, not just sobriety, is so incredibly
and routine building, again, it's the same thing, right? Like, so you say, okay, well, I'm not going to drink on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And that's your routine, right? And then you say, okay, this is going great. Let's add Monday. And now I don't drink Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then you say, okay, well, now I have Sunday out. And now you're drinking Fridays and Saturdays. And maybe you say, holy shit, this works great for me. This is perfect for me. It's not affecting work. It's not affecting, whatever. And so building routines is the same thing, right? So if you slip up on a day you don't work out, you say, okay, I took a day off and tomorrow I get right back to it. And it's not the weight. The weight is where people struggle with routines, with sticking with things. They feel like they can't do it because I got to do it. And if I screw up one day, it's over. And there's that weight doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. Well, and that weight makes it harder too, because then when you fail, after you try and start up again and then you fail again, all that pressure puts so much more onus on you to even want to start again, because you've experienced failures and you're afraid that if you try and start again, you're going to experience that same failure. You know what I mean? So I get that when you're talking about this. And also congratulations on your sobriety. And also thank you for sharing that with us. It actually surprises me that you got so much vitriol from people from sharing that, because you were even talking before we started, recording, just about like, it's okay if you're not sober. I'm not telling you have to be sober, but if you're somebody that is interested in that, this is my journey, or these are some, words of advice that I might be able to offer you. So it's surprising that people were so adverse to that, but I'll try not to keep this too long. Are you familiar with Rat Park? Have you ever heard that phrase before?
No.
Well, so they did a study. I don't know if it was in the 60s or 50s or what, but they basically put like rats in cages, and they had two water feeders. One was regular water and one was water laced with either heroin or cocaine. And the rats got addicted to the drug laced water, and they basically drink it until they died. And the conclusion from that experiment was, oh my God, drugs are so bad, and they are, you get addicted to them and you'll die. Just, stay away from them. Later, another group of researchers looked at this and they're like, well, okay, but you just had rats stuck in this shitty little cage where there was nothing to do but drink drugged water. So they created Rat Park, which was, like a big terrarium or enclosure, whatever, for all the rats, where there's colorful balls to play with and plenty of rats to socialize with and have sex with and cheese to eat. And they did the same experiment where they put the drugged water and the regular water in, and almost none of the rats used the drugged water because they were fulfilled. And I think, it's like you said, everyone's relationship with alcohol is different. But I think something like right now, especially in the US and for quite a while, I think that there's one of the reasons you see mental health and these issues happening on such a almost epidemic level is because people they don't feel fulfilled in their lives. We've lost our community, which I also think is interesting too, because the bar is a lot of the times where people come back to find community. You don't have to know anybody there, but you can go in, and even if you're not drinking, you can go and sit down and have a, alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage, but you can kind of be a part of something, be a part of your community in a way.
Bars and restaurants, they're the new church.
Yeah,
they are. I mean, it's that third space, right? Like your first space is home, second's work, and the third space is where you go to process everything in between.
Community.
But that's just that I couldn't stop thinking about that as you were explaining that, because I think that the alcohol and any substance like that can really exacerbate the situation. Sometimes it's not always the actual problem, though.
Oh, it's almost never the problem.
Yeah.
And I was going to jump on that when you started talking about Rat Park, because thank you, by the way. I can't wait to read about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And so one of the things I always talk about is that alcohol for me, and it's not for everybody. I mean, some people get like physically, addicted to drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. But for me, drugs were a numbing agent. And so what I tell people a lot of times is that it's not actually the alcohol that's the problem. It's you'll just pick something else up. It's actually the shit you're numbing yourself from. Yeah. And so when I got sober, I was going through the beginnings of a divorce. I was, really feeling kind of shitty about myself. And obviously falling into that whirlwind of alcoholism does not help your self-esteem by any means, because you're feeling like shit every morning. And
it does while you're drunk. You feel pretty good when you're drunk, but
no, you're numb. You're numb to it. And so you use that to help you. And so when you take that out, and I did this, I'm I'm trying to be more visibly social. And so on social media, on Instagram, I'm trying to do these reels where I'm taking a walk and I'm talking about topics. And I just did this the other day talking about fear. And, everybody has fears, right? And so what do you do when you're afraid of failing, when you're afraid you're not good enough and you feel bad about yourself and you have all these self-esteem issues? You choose something to take those feelings away. So when you take alcohol or whatever it is that's numbing you away, all of a sudden all those things come up, like boom, they punch you in the face and you have to deal with them. And so that year, like I always say, like 2015 was my second birth. And I'm not trying to get like weird on you guys, but like that was like a kind of like a do-over for my life, like that moment. And so the past, 10 years feels like a completely separate life from the other rest of my life, where I said, I'm going to deal with all this shit that I've accumulated in the first, 35 years of my life. And I'm going to sort of deal with all of that. And I'm not going to numb it down. And, I got a therapist and I worked through a lot of that. And I got out of a bad marriage. And, even my ex-wife and I, like, we have a better relationship now. I have a better relationship with my kids. I found my partner that like is a perfect match for me. And I just found out who I was and all of that kind of stuff. But it's all connected, right? So like Rat Park, you have to find fulfillment. Like you have to deal with the shit that you're numbing before you're going to find peace with taking away that numbing agent. Yeah. And so it's not like you get sober and all of a sudden you're like, yay, life's
everything works out. Yeah.
No, it's you're just starting. And like that, I think that's part of the hard part is that people take it away and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I'm not ready to deal with all this shit. And they reach again. So I think there's something to that.
Oh, I'm John. I'm sorry. I know I'm jumping in, but I genuinely appreciate you being vulnerable about this. And what's interesting to me to hear you talk about this too is someone who has seen so much success in their career. It's interesting to hear your viewpoint on it, because I think a lot of people struggle with those same thoughts, those same negative views of life and of themselves that you dealt with. But look at what you've done with your life. And even when you were drinking, you were still, moving your way up and becoming something and building yourself up. But I just think it's refreshing to just hear somebody who is, succeeded in so many ways that struggles with so many of the same issues that everybody else does.
Oh, for sure. Like imposter syndrome still to this day, all the time, and it's funny because I remember like with World Class, like winning in 17, and I went in like, well, and we can talk about that specifically later, but I went in like a bull and like a horse with blinders, like to win that thing in 17. And then when I won, I wasn't even surprised. I was doing visualization, like I was seeing myself winning weeks beforehand. And I was going in there like, I'm winning this thing. Like no one has a chance against me. Like, I don't even think I talked to any of the competitors for those 3 days. I was just a jerk. I was essentially a jerk. I was like
so far removed from your flair bartending experience in the Caymans. All these people are so welcoming. You're like, fuck you, I'm gonna beat your ass, motherfucker.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hate to say it like that. This was the fourth go, and I was over it, and I was like, I'm winning this thing. Like, I was 100% business. But when I won, then the next day they were like, okay, we're going to send you the global stuff. And I was like, oh shit. Like,
I'm not over. Oh, here it comes.
But never, imposter syndrome and like fears and like that, they never go away. They never go away. It's just, again, like now I can deal with it. Like, so I'm, started this business and like I all of a sudden a whole new set of fears showed up, and like walking away from a guaranteed bar shift to take on a business that I don't have any guarantees on. All of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, like again, fears start popping up. But now I don't need to pound a bottle to deal with the fear. I'm like, all right, well, what am I feeling and why am I feeling it? And let me talk to somebody about it. And, and you just deal with it on a healthier way. And all of a sudden you start to, I hate to use the word wins because everyone's like, oh, what's your big win? I hate that phrase. But like you start to pile up these wins and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? Like I can handle this kind of shit. And you just, you build up a self-esteem about you. And I don't personally believe I'm an arrogant person, but I have a confidence that I didn't have before I quit drinking because again, you just build up this feeling like whatever comes my way, I'll figure it out. I'll handle it.
Yeah. And I think that this is the perfect segue to talk about, you know, your company that you started too, right? Like, you know, your sobriety is part of the journey that got you to where you are today to launch this company. And I think I want to talk about that a little bit. Like, I want to hear about this. You know, I know you had your launch party last night, which was incredibly successful.
Yeah.
You know? So like, walk us through this, you know, how's it going? You know, like, how did you start the business? How did you get the idea for it? How did it come to fruition?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because it's a relaunch technically. I opened the business years ago because my accountant one day was like, dude, you're doing all these private events and you're getting 1099 from all these companies.
Start an LLC, like, let's go.
And so he's like, start an S Corp and you can use it. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I started it. And, you know, I didn't want to like be weird about it. So I created an Instagram page for it and I created a Facebook page for it. And everyone's like, oh, what's your business? I'm like, nothing. Don't worry about it. And so I just kind of sat on it. Now going back,
shelter, it's fine.
100%. And so going back to what we were talking about.
I mean, he's been to the Cayman Islands, you know. He wasn't just Flair bartending down there.
Finally found the conspiracy theory.
So, you know, going back to what we were talking about. So in 2017, I get all this vitriol. I get all these people to tell me to shut the fuck up. And, you know, about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago now, I'm watching the world change around me. And everyone is, you know, it's just a different world than it was in 2017. People are not drinking as much. Like the stats are in. I mean, like 30% of people aren't drinking like they used to. And I was out with a buddy of mine last night for dinner, and we were talking after the launch party, and you know, it was like the idea of people going out till like 3:30, 4 in the morning and getting fucking wrecked. Like that's not cool anymore. And like younger people are like, what the fuck did you used to do when you were 20? Like that's embarrassing. And like that energy is just, it's very different now. And so having, you know, I'm going around, I'm watching, even when I'm at work at Isodi, you know, people aren't drinking as much and they're ordering more non-alcoholic cocktails. They're getting non-alcoholic beer, and bars are showing up with non-alcoholic menus and low ABV menus. And Diageo's talking about like the alcohol percentage in your cocktail that you're submitting. Like it's just different. And like, I think one of the biggest things is that non-alcoholic products are good now. And I don't think that was the case 3 years ago. You know, it's like, I always think of Seedlip as my first introduction to a really good non-alcoholic product, where I was like, oh shit, this is actually good. The first time ever. But now there's so many, you know, between Liars and Pathfinder and like Ritual, and like, there's so many quality products out there now that it's like, oh, okay, like there's a market here. And like a lot of the non-alcoholic RTDs, some of them are shit, but some of them are really good. And so it's like, it's just a different world. So I was going to an event, and it was by a woman named Absence of Proof. And it was an incredibly run event. And it inspired me because I said, there's a whole community of people who are sober. This was a sober event, who need a place, right? And I've always felt like I need a place. But I always felt like I have to deal with it, that there is no place. So I had to accept the sort of, this is going to sound weird, but the shame of being sober in a world that values alcohol. So I was like, all right, well, there's just no place for me. So what do? I sit on the fucking couch. I can still go out to a restaurant. I can still have dinner, but I have no place in bars. And so
there's also a tipping point too. You know, like I go through periods of being sober, kind of like what you talked about before too. But like there's a tipping point where like everybody else around you is getting drunk and it stops being fun. So maybe I will just stay at home and watch Netflix on my couch and hang out with my partner or my family, you know, like it's
right. Exactly. So I'm at this event, and it was she did like some breath work, and then there was an ice plunge. I don't know if you guys have ever done an ice plunge, like where you go in an ice bath for 3 minutes. I was fucking terrified, like absolutely terrified. And my girlfriend's like, no, she did it before me. And she's like, no, it's really fun. You're going to enjoy this event. And I was like dreading it. And she's like, listen, like if you get there and you don't want to do it, like don't do it. And the instructor who did the breath work was like so like chilled out, and like you felt like I was like, all right, I'm gonna fucking do this. And I got in, and like the first 30 seconds, I won't lie, like it kind of sucks. And then your body kind of like just,
you're in a fucking ice bath. I mean, come on.
I think the water was 60. I think it was 60 degrees on the temperature. And you go in for 3 minutes, and like she's kind of like next to you, and she's like, like, are you okay? And like just breathe and like trying to like take your mind off and talk. And I got out of it. And I remember being like, so after a few minutes of calming down, so chilled, like insanely chilled out.
No pun intended, right?
And no pun intended.
I'm sorry.
I went out of the place, and I was like, that was so fucking cool. And it was like, you know what? Like, you don't have to have alcohol in an environment like this. And she did like a table of RTDs that you could offer. And I was like, that was incredible. Like, what a fun concept. And then you flip it for all my previous years of Tales and Diageo stuff. And those are really fun events, but there's never an option for me. So I stand there with my hands in my pockets the entire time. And so I said, holy shit, wait a minute. I said, like, light bulb. I said, there's a niche here. And I can do both. And so I can do events where it can be the no and low space, and people can have a choice. And so my trademark of my company is that like everyone deserves a seat at the bar, right? So I'll give you a quick story. I'm in Denver for World Class, and we go to dinner, and it was an incredible dinner. And we sat down at the table. It was a judge's dinner, and we had menus placed around us, and everyone had a cocktail menu, and there was no non-alcoholic option on it. It was just cocktails. It was like 8 of them. And everyone, the server came around and they were like, hey, John, what are you having? And John was like, I'm having a daiquiri. And they were like, great, moving on. And so they worked their way around the room, and they came over to me, and the server was like, listen, like, we know you don't drink, so we have a non-alcoholic cocktail for you. And the intention was fucking awesome. Like, I get it. Like, they were taking their time to understand the situation, be compassionate about it, and have something ready for me because they didn't want me to feel excluded.
But now they've also singled you out.
The delivery excluded me. And I wasn't pissed. I wasn't upset. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not like crying about this. But I thought about it, and I said, all you had to do was put it on the menu. I would have ordered it. And who knows? Maybe, and if he's listening to this, Charles Jolie would have wanted a non-alcoholic cocktail that day too, because maybe he just wasn't in the mood to drink. And he didn't want to advertise it and make it a big thing. So all they had to do was put on the menu instead of making a thing. And so I'm like, there's a space here where we can have fun engagements in a no and low alcohol space where people can then be empowered to make the decision and they don't have to feel awkward. So last night we have the launch. We do 2 no alcohol, 2 low alcohol. There's non-alcoholic beer. There was non-alcoholic wine. There was also alcoholic wine. There was alcoholic beer. And guess what? I think 60 people were there. And I couldn't tell you. If you were like, Chris, I'll give you $1 million right now. Could you tell me who was drinking and who wasn't? I couldn't fucking tell you because I wasn't paying attention. And no one knew. So everyone could just do their own thing and no one had to decide and feel awkward and not have an option. And I said, this is it, man. This is how we grow our industry. And so that's the mission. That's the goal.
Well, and you're flipping the script a little bit too, because having those options available makes people think about it a little bit more. To where if it's on the menu, it's a part of the experience, makes them question what path they're walking down a little bit more too. It makes them a little bit more self-aware of those things.
Well,
right.
Sorry, John, go on. I've been cutting you off a lot this episode. I'm sorry.
And again, I'm not with 3 guys on this podcast right now, but like you think about how fucking shitty it is for a woman to have to be asked, are you pregnant? Because they're not drinking. Like, none of your fucking business, And so like you just take away all of it. It's just so easy, and yet it's so fucking hard.
Well, there's also something to be said too. Whenever you're at an event like that and you're not really paying for drinks because drinks are being provided at like Tales of the Cocktail and things like that, right? If there's non-alcoholic options there, as a bartender, who most bartenders I know are very intuitive, they're very creative, they want to explore things and learn, they're more likely to try a non-alcoholic thing because they don't have to pay for it. And that's incredible too, that you're creating an option for people to just have that outlet for maybe the first time. They're sober curious, right?
You literally took the words out of my girlfriend's mouth last night. She said, when we were driving back, she said, your event was awesome. And I was like, well, of course, like, tell me why, what was because obviously you want that praise, but sure, you also
absolutely
you want to hear
feedback. Yeah,
you want feedback. And so I was like, why, what was good? And so, she's going through it and she said exactly what you just said. The fact that the people up on that roof, a lot of them are in the industry and they don't have to pay for a drink that they can now go, oh, I've always wanted to try that. And at these gigantic events that are run by these companies who, and again, I'm not trying to disparage any companies because I know everybody's honestly trying to do their best here, but a lot of them preach, oh, well, we want to be inclusive, but we want to make sure everybody's thought about. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, let people try your stuff, and Seedlip's been great. Diageo's been great about it. Like every world class, Seedlip is on that reserve portfolio, and of course, who gets every non-alcoholic drink in those competitions? This guy, yay!
Right.
But like, when I used to compete, I would try to flip the scripts on people. So like John LeMayer, rest in peace. I love John. John used to talk to me about how he would always get like these boozy cocktails when he would when he was judging. And so I gave him a coffee cocktail because we had talked about how much he loved coffee, but it was like low ABV espresso martini sort of twist thing the year I won. And he said when we were done, he was like, dude, you're the only person to not give me a boozy stirred cocktail the whole day. Thank you. And so like, maybe as a competitor, like John, maybe, like the move is to give judges who don't normally drink NA drinks be like, wow, like that was cool because it's different for them. And something, again, like you said, it's giving people an opportunity to try something that they don't normally try. And the bartending industry is full of creative people who want inspiration, who want to try new things.
Well, and not even just that too. Like we're in a creative, period where before all these non-alcoholic ingredients came out, there aren't tons of new ingredients coming out all the time. Like it's kind of the same things. We're all making similar drinks at our bars using very similar ingredients from our kitchens, And now all of a sudden, for the first time in a while, there is a giant push of new ingredients readily available for us to use and make drinks with. And almost all of them are non-alcoholic. Like, how cool is that that's happening for the first time in a decade, probably, really?
Yeah, again, to echo what we said earlier, and they're good. And that's the difference.
Yeah, well, I mean, it trickles down, too, to where I remember Happy Accidents in Albuquerque. She was on Drink Masters. I think her name's Kate. I might be wrong.
Gerwin.
Yes.
Yeah.
We went out, we were in Albuquerque for a night and we went out there and I was the designated driver. They had a bunch of cool non-alcoholic cocktails. So I got to sit there and still enjoy while my friends were drinking the alcoholic beverages. I got to sit there and enjoy some cool, delicious cocktails as well and not have to worry about, any alcohol. So there's so many different ways to look at it, but it's so cool that you found that niche, and I really, really wish you the best of luck with all of that. That's really incredible.
Yeah, Kate is one of a handful who like really fucking gets it, and I'm so happy for her success. And I'm gonna make sure she listens to this. Hi, Kate.
Yeah, no, she's incredible.
That banana soda they've got there is, I think that's what it's called. Pretty delicious. Pretty delicious.
I do have to hit you with one more topic because we teased it in the episode, and we do have to talk about it. It is, this part of your your bio that you sent to me that Mike is very excited about. We know that you
Come on, how could I not be? Come on.
You've taught some celebrities how to bartend too.
Yeah.
How did that happen, and what is that experience like?
So I'm gonna probably sound ridiculously stupidly humble here, but I'm the only show in town in New York that knows how to flare. So
that's fair, and has the accolades that you do, and it's real.
To be fair, there's a little bit of that there. At the end of the day, it's just like anything else, right? You do it once, and all of a sudden somebody's like, "Oh, this person's done it. Let's hire them to do this." So yeah, I've actually had the opportunity to train a couple. My favorite was Neil Patrick Harris.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's who I wanted to talk about. What did you have to teach him to bartend for? What work was it?
Yeah. So Neil had a variety show called Best Time Ever. And he did it. It was actually a really successful show in London and in the UK. And they wanted to sort of parody it and do it here. Sure. So he got hired to be the host, and they reached out to me and they're like, listen, we're doing this variety show where Neil is going to sort of be taught different artistic things and do them with the person. And then also, he had guests, and like it was a really fun show. It only lasted a season, and I honestly don't know why, because I really enjoyed it. Like, had nothing to do with being on the show. I thought it was just a fun concept. Mm-hmm. They called me up and they said, would you be available to train Neil Patrick Harris? I was like, fuck yeah! Like, I was born in 1980, so I grew up on Doogie Howser. So I was like, and I liked him. Like, I liked that show. I was probably like 8, 9, 10, 11 years old when I watched that show, and I liked it. I thought it was a good show. And then when he recreated his image with Harold and Kumar, and it was like, wait, what? Like, Neil Patrick Harris is on acid? Like, this is so weird, And
complete rebrand.
Yeah, he's on acid and he's straight. And,
right.
What I remember him from Starship Troopers. That was my first introduction.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he parlayed that role into How I Met Your Mother, and it was just like,
great show. Yeah.
Oh my God. And so when they said, they asked me, I was like, of course, So I go to Brooklyn, and I will say that I've worked in a couple high-end restaurants where we deal with a lot of celebrities. And one of my fears about working restaurants with celebrities is that sometimes your heroes suck. Mm-hmm. And it's like the worst feeling in the world, because you're like so excited, and then you're like, no, like I thought you were fucking awesome and you're actually shit in real life. And that's a horrible, horrible feeling. Sometimes it goes the other way, where they're like the nicest people on the planet, and you're like, oh, I love you now, and I want to watch every single movie you've ever been in. So it goes both ways. But I was really nervous because I didn't know where I was going to go with him, because he seems like a genuinely nice human being. So he walks in and he's like, hey, how are you? I'm Neil. And I'm like, I know. And so like he shakes my hand and he's like,
and I'm Mr. Cardone.
No, but it's really cool. He was like, so before we get into it, like, tell me about yourself. And he was like genuinely interested in my story. So we like sat down and like I gave him a quick bio, and he's like, oh, this is so cool because like I have a background in circus and magic. And so Flair sort of like is kind of
the same yes.
That same universe. And so I was like, all right, well, like I want to show you some really basic stuff that you can learn. And I like showed him, and he did it on the first try. And I was like, oh fuck. Like it was like that. And so I was like, all right, well, let's try some harder stuff. Just kept picking it up, and I was like, oh my God. And so we did some really advanced stuff on that first episode. And he was like, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in a few weeks. And so, I gave him a couple bottles. I was like, take them, practice, do your thing. If you have any questions, I guess, email me. I don't know, whatever. And so a couple weeks later, we were on, it was myself and my buddy, Willie Zaza, who actually owns a spot in Brooklyn. Will's also he had the Flair background that turned into like the cocktail world kind of thing. And I brought him in, and they were like, we need a second. And Will's was top level. And so I brought him in, and, we were on stage, and it's like a month later. And, Patrick Harris walks in, and he's like, hey, Chris, how are you?
Aww.
And like, it's stupid, but like, how many freaking interactions does this guy have on a daily basis that for a month later to remember my first name and like take the time to say hello? Because most people don't do that. Yeah. And so I was like, man, he's actually like a really nice guy. And so then he nailed it. By the way, you can still Google it. So if you Google Best Time Ever episode 1 Flair Bardtenders, there's still a video of him like popping up and doing Flair with me and Will. And he nailed it. And so I was like, this is so cool. And I'll tell you a really embarrassing quick story. So Reese Witherspoon was the guest host that episode. And I have always loved Reese Witherspoon. Loved. And so, and this is going back to like when she was on Fear and stuff. And like, we were probably like, I think we're the same age. So like, I was like, oh, I love this girl. And so
poster in your room growing up. Totally get it.
Maybe not that far, but yeah. So I got a chance to meet her, and she was like, she's from the South. So she has that drawl, and she was like, y'all were amazing. And I remember freezing and being like, you're great too. And like walking away and having Will look at me, and he's like, did you just fucking say you're great too? And I was like, I know what to say. It's really embarrassing. Maybe she'll listen to this and she'll be like, oh my God. Like, anyway, so yeah.
That's great. I love that.
So he called me back, and I did the final episode of his first season. It was actually ended up being the final episode of the series. But he called me back, and his producers called me back, and they were like, we want to bring back some of the acts that he did over these past 10 episodes for the final episode of the first season. Would you come back and do it? I was like, of course. And 10 weeks later, Chris, how are you? How's the restaurant? So that was a really, really cool story. He's been my favorite person to train for sure.
I love that.
I will not divulge who it was. I don't want to make any awkward moments, but I did train another person. I did train another celebrity who was incredible to train. He was super, super nice guy. And I gave him some bottles and he's like, thank you so much. I'm so excited about this role in this movie. And he ran with the movie. And they interviewed him afterwards, and they were like, where did you learn how to bartend? Where did you learn how to do that? And he was like, I spent a lot of years behind a bar in London. And I was like,
mother.
I know who this is, and I won't say it.
You can't see the halo, but there's a halo over there. So that was the most disappointing experience. But I've had a couple interactions with people training, and generally it's always so much fun. It's cool. It's just cool. It's cool to interact. Now, We're blessed. We deal with a lot of celebrity type clientele, and I'm really blessed with the opportunity to meet a lot of them. And it's weirdly now I'm at the point where I don't care anymore. So when a celebrity comes in, people are like, "Oh my god," and I'm like, "Dude, they're just another person wanting to have dinner. Let's just all shut the fuck up and leave them alone." And so now that sort of star-studded feeling is sort of gone.
Unless it's Reese Witherspoon, I'm sure.
Scarlett Johansson one time rubbed my lion tattoo. She's like, "Oh, I love lions," and I was like,
I love lions too.
Yeah, this is going back to 8 years ago. But yeah, she was like, I was serving her dish, and I put it out, and it was there, and she's like, "Oh my god, I love this," and I was like, "Oh my god."
Okay, we talked about flair bartending. I want to hit you with a user question. So one of our viewers, one of our fans. So we recently launched our Discord, and for those of you listening to this, if you want to be on our Discord, it's amazing hospitality professionals from all over the world that are on this. We're in the beta test right now. After the conference this week, we're going to go live with it, so it'll be out there for everybody. But if you want to join, you can send us a message. We'll send you the invite. We'd love to have you. But we asked them give us some questions. We said Chris was going to be on the show. We shared his bio. And one of our users, no, it's good. It was an actual, genuine, honest question. It's great. So this comes from Scared of Profits. What does the future of flair bartending look like?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know. I think that I still think there's something there. I think that it's really interesting, right? Because flair is always about what's outside of the drink. It's always been about that. It's been entertaining people outside of what's inside your glass. It's all of the other stuff. And then mixology is all about what's in your glass. So I think there's something there. Do I think it makes sense in most markets? No. Because you look at Las Vegas. Las Vegas has always been a flair capital of the world because people are there, they're on vacation, and they're there for a show. And whether it's going to a show for an hour to watch the Beatles, which I went to and it was mind-blowingly cool, or they're there to watch a street performer on the strip, right? They're there for a show. They're there to have a good time. So they don't mind ordering a cocktail or a drink or whatever and sitting there and watching somebody go to town for 2 minutes making a drink. But it doesn't work in most markets. Most markets are like, dude, can I have my drink, please? What are you doing? But there's a European influence in bartending that you see a lot on the internet where people are just manipulating a tool quickly. So a little bar spoon spin with their fingers where it's kind of like a baton and they're swinging around before they do it. Or you think about what is the definition of flair bartending? It's it's bartending with pizzazz, right? It's bartending with style. You can argue, and I had this conversation with the late Gary Reagan years ago about you can argue that the way you shake a drink is flair bartending. The way you do a really long pour on your martini, the way you throw a cocktail, that's flair bartending. It's not flair bartending where you're juggling around bottles, but it's showing a mastery of the tools that you're using. So one of my favorite stories was I was doing World Class in 14, and Julie Reiner, who was my previous boss at the time and always makes me nervous, Not anymore, but then made me really nervous. And I was competing in a round. It was one of those challenges where you get a deck of cards and you just open it up and it's like spirit forward, using this brand with this style, celebrating a birthday, go. And I was in the middle of my round and I'm like trying to like ideate this cocktail while I'm trying to like BS a story with them. And she literally said, like, I had everything done. It was in a tin. And she goes, what? No flair? And without hesitation, I grabbed the Hawthorne and I threw it behind my back into what's called a helicopter where it spins on its side. And it just boop, right on the tin. And her and David Nepop, who were my judges at the time, both were like, get the fuck out of here. It was like the coolest fucking moment, you know? And Shannon Sturgis, the best photographer in the business, got a shot of it where the Hawthorne is legit here. And I have like a Hawthorne mustache. And this is 14. So this is when everybody still had a mixology mustache, when that was cool. And it was like the epitome of perfect photography where it was like, boom, Hawthorne was right there. And it just landed perfectly. And both of them were like blown away. And so is there a future? I think so. And like, I had a conversation with somebody recently about how there's like an underground flair movement where like on TikTok and YouTube, people are still badasses and they're doing their thing. So it's sort of like where flair is cool now again, because it's so underground that it's not uncool anymore. Like there was a moment where flair was really cool. Mixology took it over and then flair was not cool. And it was like, dude, you're a flair bartender. Like, and now it's so underground that it's kind of cool again. So I think the argument is, I think everyone deep down like loves flair bartending. Like they're like, whoa, how cool is this? But on the exterior, they're like, okay, show off, shut the fuck up and, just make me my drink. So I think if we can figure out the people who like flair bartending and the people who are interested in that kind of like showing of like a mastery of your craft, I think if there's a way to do it where it doesn't feel like it's affecting the timing on your drink, what we used to refer to as working flair, if you can do it throughout the night and you're not slowing down service and it's just like here and there and little things, I think people think it's fucking cool as shit.
It would be surprising because if you go to a place where they do flair bartending, you're there for that show. But if you're just going to a regular bar and they're doing those adding that extra little flair onto what they're doing, it would be surprising and kind of mesmerizing to, what's he going to do next? Yeah. Personally, I always want to see him drop a bottle, but I'm an asshole. So
no, I was just about to say it's a weird culture because more people would rather see you drop it than land it.
I'll tip better if you drop it. If you drop it, I'll tip better. I'll just tell you that right now.
It's like a common theme. People want to see you drop. It's crazy.
So what would be so if some people were interested in checking out some of this, as you called it, working flair, what would be a good resource? And I almost imagine this is kind of why you said that bartending school doesn't make a whole lot of sense, probably just because the resources that are available online right now kind of supersede needing to go to any course like that. Am I fair in assuming that?
I would argue that you could become a mixologist in about a week on nowadays online. Like you can learn the basics real fast now. So there's I heard there's this guy who did like a whole series on howto.com on flair bartending, like all the basic working flair moves.
I got it. I got it.
Like, this is gonna be Chris, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
And people still talk about it. They're like, "Oh my god, I remember that! Like, I remember seeing you in that." So, yeah, I think there's, like you can certainly find how to do it. My argument is that it's like art, right? And so, I mean, you can let's use this as like let's keep the cocktail theme going, right? If somebody walks into your bar and they're like, "Hey, I want you to make me a cocktail," you're foolish if you make a drink you've never made before. If you're like, "Oh yeah, I had this idea last night. Let me just make it for you and see how you go."
Yeah, you've just all been there, especially early in your career.
You've lost all credibility because that drink probably sucked. And so they're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But if you have that like back pocket cocktail and they're like, make me a cocktail. And you're like, all right, well, give me a little information. You get, A, B, and C from them. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to make you this. And they're like, holy shit, this is incredible. Now you've just built trust. And now they're ready to, oh my God, I want to try your next drink and your next drink. And I'm going to come see you every week to make me a new cocktail. And I'm going to try to stump you and all that kind of stuff. You build a relationship from that. So it's the same thing with flair bartending where like, don't go and watch howto.com and be like, oh, well, I saw how to do it. So let me go do it on my next shift. Your boss is going to be like,
practice. duct tape your bottles up, practice at home, then bring it to the bar.
Watch Cocktail, watch the how-to videos, get in there.
I still love Cocktail. Can I tell you a really silly story real fast?
You can tell it as slow as you want. This is great.
So, during the pandemic, when we were all losing our minds, my girlfriend and I were doing like a movie at night, and she had never seen Cocktail. And so we were watching the movie, and the Kokomo song came on. And one of us, I don't know which one of us said it, but like in jest, we were like, we should go to all the islands of the Kokomo song. Like we should go to every destination in the place, because that movie is what got me started 25 years ago, right? Yeah. So one of us said it. We kind of both giggled and laughed, and like that was the end of it. And then like a few days later, one of us was like, no, that's actually kind of a cool idea. Let's do it. And so we've been doing it. And so we've been hitting all of the islands on that song.
Nice.
Now, here's the kicker. Kokomo is actually a real place. And if I'm not I want to say it's either Illinois or Indiana. It's a tiny, like, nothing town in, like, one of those states. I feel like it's Illinois. It's, like, outside of Chicago. And so we said after we hit all of these places, we're going to go to Kokomo for a night.
So Kokomo is not like a place in the Caribbean?
No.
Oh, my God.
Google it while we're talking. Hold on, wait. It is. Hold on.
Google this. He also said that he's going to stop in the Cayman Islands as well to re-up his bank.
All right, he's going to make some withdrawals and some deposits, I'm sure.
The city in Indiana with a population of 59,000 people.
Is that? Did the Beach Boys know that when they wrote the song?
They had to have.
I would assume.
Brian Wilson was sleeping on that one. He knew.
Isn't that crazy? And so I never knew that. And so my coworker, Devin Boyle, who's from Indiana, he worked with Josh Gonzalez at Thunderbird, who now works with Beatty Sodi. He was the one who told me that. He's like, dude, Kokomo's in like Indiana. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. And then we found it. We're like, oh my God, we got to go. So that's going to be the culmination. We're like 2 or 3 places out. And so every year we go to one. We were in Aruba last year. It was incredible. Wow. And so every year we go to one, and Kokomo is going to be the culmination of the trip.
And the least expensive, I'm sure.
There has to be a Beach Boys museum there, like something. Like, that would be
Little did you know.
Maybe it's like Margaritaville, and like they have speakers outside the town, and everywhere is just that song playing on loop.
I'd go. I'm in.
I love that.
Okay. Last question for you. We gave you more than 45 minutes to think about this one. What was your favorite shift? We asked everybody who's been on the show, kind of like, what's that moment that you've enjoyed, like working behind the bar?
So this is really hard, because there's been so many great nights in so many different places. But I think if I have to pick one, I can pick a lot of nightmares, but if I had to pick one, I'm actually going back to the Roadhouse, one of my first spots.
Nice. And, full circle.
Yep. And so Monday nights at the Roadhouse in Center Reach, Long Island was not the place to be. Like, it was just not. And so, I would get in that like 5 to 6 o'clock hour. We talked about it a little earlier, like, it was all construction workers coming off, like, coming out, literally parking their motorcycles outside, coming in, having a couple beers, throwing me $20 and walking out. But like, I did okay. But like from 8 till midnight, 1, 2, whatever time we closed, like, it was slim pickings, and I was ending up playing pool with people and like throwing darts with people. And, let me go get the beer. Here you go. And like back to like, the game and stuff like that. And I talked to my boss. His name was Mike. He was an incredible first person to work for in this industry, because he was like the epitome of like the pickled boss, like where it was just like, he's been doing it forever. And like, he just gave it to you straight. And I remember asking him, I said, Mike, would you be opposed to having a water fight on Monday night, where I will make water balloons and I will let everyone who buys a drink throw a water balloon at me?
This is an incredible idea. I love this.
And I was a 20-year-old Long Island little asshole. I'm still a Long Island asshole, but I was a 20-year-old little asshole from Long Island who would, talk like this. And like, I thank God I've lost that accent over the years, but at least partially. And so I think the opportunity to wing a water balloon at little stupid me was like, oh, I'll do that. I had this fucking place packed. And the owner was like, yo, this is the most successful Monday I've ever had in this bar. We made so much money. I made and he made so much money. And there was water balloons, like broken pieces of
the plastic, yeah.
everywhere, and I had to stay for hours and clean this up. But he was like, this was like the dumbest, most ingenious idea I've ever seen. And so if I have to pick one for the sheer stupidity and when you get to like the truth, right? Like, what do we love about this industry? It's fun. It really is. Like, you cut through all the bullshit, right? And all of the problems and all the crap that comes with this industry. At the end of the day, this industry is fun and it's a blast. And when you embrace the fun that can be part of this industry, like, that moment for me epitomizes what this job is about. And like I said, it was this dumb idea. I had it on a whim. He was like, let's do it, whatever. And I mean, I can't explain it. Like, mobbed, like sardines.
Oh, yeah.
Busy.
That's incredible.
This is why we asked that story, because like everybody has these amazing gems, right? Like things that have happened to them, and you reflect on it. But it also tells us, you know, like, one, why we do this, but how we're all connected, and like why we do this job and why we love this industry so much. And like, that's your story, right? It's about having fun. Like, we all want that in bars and restaurants, you know, like we all share that common like ideal. So I love that so much.
Yeah. Until you burn out in this industry, it's hard to feel like you're going to work, right?
Yeah, it's true. It is true. 100%. Chris, thank you for being on the show tonight. This was
that was
absolutely
a blast, man.
incredible. So many good stories along the way, sharing your journey. God, so great.
See you guys next week. We'll do it again.
Yeah.
Let's run it back.
Next topic. Let's go.
Yep, I'm bringing water balloons next time for sure.
No, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was so much fun being on the show, and like I said, I'd love to come back and we'll do it again sometime. But thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it.
You got to be on the Bartender Rant podcast at some point in time too. So
you say when, man?
Yeah.
Chris, we like to do some shout outs. So I think we need to do some shout outs. Where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you? Give us the details.
Yeah, so the business website is continuousbev.com. And then look at that.
He's professional. He don't play around.
It's my second day.
Instagram, I mean, personally it's my name. It's Chris Cardone, but I'm edgy, so the O is a 0. And then the business website is at Continuous Bev.
So I wanted to ask, is it Chris Cardone? Because it's 1, but it was Chris Cardone with a 0. I was like, oh, this is clever.
It's just a 0 because the O wasn't available.
He's just Cardone with our bullshit.
Here's another really dumb story. I worked at a Sam Goody before I got into bartending, and the girl I worked with had the same last name as me, and she had a tattoo on her forearm of an ace. And she was like, yo, bro, like, again, Sam Goody, right? She's like, yo, bro, we're both card 1, the ace. And I was like, oh my God. I gotta get out of here like real fast. Like I got a view into what my life was about to become. And I was like,
here's the real origin story right there, man.
Part 1, the ace. So so Continuous Bev is my social and on Instagram, and I got Substack. It's I'm trying to embrace this in the social media world. At 45, trying to learn about stuff it's not, we get into ruts and we get into our sort of our thing, and we don't like to try new shit. And I'm really trying to be open to it. And I've actually kind of enjoyed it. I'm like, all right, like I can do this. This isn't so bad. So it's been kind of a fun to learn about like Reels and Substack and all this kind of stuff. It's a really cool outlet that I didn't really embrace or understand until recently. So I've been enjoying it.
There's one thing we've learned about you through the course of this episode is that when you set your mind to something, it ends up going pretty well. So
especially if somebody thinks that you can't do it.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, Chris, you can't do this. I'm sorry.
One of my really big beliefs is that to set audacious goals. And this comes from a guy named Will Gadara, who wrote Unreasonable Hospitality. And I met Will not too long ago, and I read his book, and I was a little skeptical, to be perfectly frank with you, because when people are talking about things like hospitality, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors there. There's a lot of people in our industry who are like, oh, I'll teach you about this. And I'm like, you've been bartending for 6 months. Like, come on. And so I was a little skeptical, and I read that book faster than probably I've read almost any other book. And I remember being like, oh my God, I got to give this book to this person. I got to let this person read it. And like, I was so enamored by it. And so one of his things is write on a cocktail napkin your audacious goal. And so he runs a thing called the Welcome Conference. And so my goal for this year is 2025. I want to be a speaker at that conference. And I don't know anything about how to get in or anything. It's just started. His 2024 just ended a couple weeks ago for him. But I'm going to figure out a way. I'm getting on that stage. So that's my new audacious goal, is to get on that stage and present something, something about my journey.
There are so many incredible like YouTube videos about the Welcome Conference and like these amazing hospitality professionals that give true, genuine speeches. So if anybody out there is learning, go watch those. Definitely jump into that. Also, while we're talking about things to shout out for this episode, we have the how-to videos. You have the Epicurious 11 Bartenders series that Chris was on.
Yeah. So they just released the Martini. They released the second episode. I think there's 6 of them total. I don't want to spoil anything for the other drinks, but they're really good. And cool. Yeah, it was so much fun. Like I was just on Phil Duff's podcast recently, and we were talking about the same concept about having looking at bartending from a different angle, right? So like there's so many shows like Chopped and all these kind of things, and like bartending doesn't have that, right? Like Drink Masters was the one
first foray into it, yeah.
Well, tough too, because Chopped, you have 30 minutes to make a dish. I can make a cocktail in a minute, 2 minutes max. Like it's hard to show that.
Right. And so we were talking about how do you sort of like create an environment where bartenders can sort of show their personalities. And I thought this Epicurious thing knocked it out of the park. Like you have 12 different bartenders. You're looking at the same cocktail 12 different ways and 12 different views. And you'll see consistencies in there. But like, what a cool idea. I love it. I'm so proud of that work.
Yeah, everybody should check that one out. I watched it today and it was so neat. And then finally, a little throwback. You mentioned Simon Sinek. He has some incredible videos out there, not just about, thoughts and like the way you process information, but about leadership and about how to, navigate social like relationships. So like, if you're into that kind of stuff, check it out. It's awesome. Mike, shout outs for you today.
Oh, this one's easy. Yeah. Just with all the talk about sobriety and, mental health. Again, I appreciate you sharing that story with us. SAMHSA's National Helpline, if you're in the States, that's SAMHSA's National Helpline. Google it. It's a 24-hour confidential helpline. They will put you, if you call that helpline from anywhere, they will put you in touch with resources within your state that you can reach out to if you're struggling. So definitely check that out if you need it.
That was a good one. Last but not least, shout out to my favorite podcast. It's called Bardtenders. You're probably listening to it right now. You're probably watching it right now. You can find us on social media at Bardtenders. You can check out our website at www.bardtender.com. We have amazing resources, like Mike mentioned, for mental and physical health. If you're in the industry, it's all free, 100% right there for you. We have the Discord channel coming out because we're about giving free information to people. There's no gatekeeping. You should not hold anything back. The information's out there, and we want to get it to you as fast as possible. So check all that out. And lastly, we love 5-star reviews. So please give us a 5-star review if you're loving what we do, the guests that are on the show. Mike made a joke in our last episode that even if you don't like the show, give us a 5-star review and leave a negative comment.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Give me 5 stars, give us a negative review, and I'll read it in the episode.
We'll read it.
I think that's great. Like,
see, now what you're doing is you're opening us to being roasted by people who like the show anyway, just so they can get their heinous comments on the wax here.
That is one of the best ideas we've had in a while. Like, I really love that. So drop us those reviews. We want to hear from you. But truly, once again, Chris, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks. This was a blast, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Please. Thanks, guys.
Time to punch out.
Yeah, let's clock out.